Okay, take two. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and non binaries, interplanetary, intergalactic time travelers, as you see fit to call yourselves. So be it. Today is May 25th. May 25th, 2022. My computer is trying to do some download updates, and I don't want that. So we'll get out of that right there. It's 225. And I just wanted to talk briefly about a little bit of the decompression of what people, what I'm reading and I'm sensing. Kind of the anytime there is children that are killed in a mass violent shooting, anytime that happens, really any mass shooting, but it seems like children really do affect our minds the hardest and the most. So, but let me go into the friendly pocket. I call it the pocket astrological constitution, the pocket constitution astrologer. And just briefly wanted to mention that yesterday, just hours before that massacre, the Mars, the planet of the warrior, the planet of wars in a way, went into Aries. Aries is the me first. It's the ram's head. It's the full forward, and that could very well affect people's psyche. I believe it does. I believe we're all electromagnetic energies, especially with some of us that have been juiced up on the jabs a little bit more. These nanoparticulate matters in the brain, they're going in, affecting the heart. We're seeing all kinds of myocarditis, all kinds of different issues. We're also breathing nanoparticles, and graphene oxide, and we're also eating. So we're really becoming, like, in a way, these lightning rods of geomagnetic energy, and that coming from solar flares, from CMEs, from all kinds of different variable type of even lasers, our radar. All of these things are affecting people's psyche, and they're affecting our bodies, and they're creating different reactions for different people under different circumstances. And that's what I always try to wonder, trying to like break down the crime scene, if you will. It's like the psychoanalysis of it, of the child psychology, the human behavior. It's interesting to me. I've always found it fascinating, even though it's kind of dark and tragic. It's like, how do you unpack that? And then really looking forward is like, how do you avoid that? You really can't avoid these kind of random scenarios. I mean, even if you had, even if you did some of the draconian gun grabs and gun control and things, which is nonsense. I mean, people, if they want to kill, they're going to kill. If they want to find guns, they're going to get them. Most of the guns out there on the street on the dark side are not legal. That means they've been bought through illegal ways. All of your legal means of gun control are totally ineffective to the underground and the black market. Understand this. Understand this in the big framing, grieving, collective emotional tragedy that we're suffering from once again, like clockwork. And there'll be more of this. There'll be more teenagers that are triggered. The damage that's happened from draconian lockdowns, the medical martial law that in primarily pushed by Democrats, controlled by Big Pharma. Republicans did limp along in many cases. I'm not going to let them off the hooks. But we've noticed a pattern with the salivating and spitting at the mouth of Democrat governors, Democrat legislators, Democrat lapdogs for Big Pharma, right? Joe Biden was very excited about everyone mandated the jabs. Experimental jabs, not a vaccine, because there wasn't anything in there that they said it was going to be combating. That's a whole nother video. But that graphene in the metals could be affecting our youth. The trauma of the policies is clearly affecting our youth. And we're dealing with the Buffalo massacre as well last weekend. That teenager, another teenagers, back-to-back teenagers coming out of traumatized high school social engineering, but social setting that's been disrupted, the bubble that had been bursted, the proms, the dances, the dates, the people, the human life, all of that, whatever pre-existing conditions had been exasperated by these Democrat policies under medical martial law. That's my theory, and I think there's plenty of evidence that's going to build around that as we continue to see the suicide rates are at all-time high, especially with our young teens. This is not a joke. This data is in front of us. The overdoses is affecting young people. The number one killer from 18 to 49 in America is an overdose, fentanyl overdose. The social structure is in decay and in decline. How do we prevent the situation of these type of violent school shootings that we saw yesterday, and we saw this violence last the week before? Very difficult to prevent, because they all would have passed psychological. They would have passed, maybe not psychological, I don't know. Maybe they would have, maybe they wouldn't, but they would have background checks. No felonies, no crimes, nothing on paper, because they're teens, they're young, they haven't had that history to be there, to be a flag in most cases. So with yesterday, I'm very curious, why was the abuela shot? Was she doing an intervention? Was it an intervention? Did she know something wasn't right? Was he came in to grab the pistol, the gun, or was there some vengeance? Is there family pain there? Is there family trauma? Where's the dad? Where's Ramos's dad? You know, why is abuela, grandma and grandpa there? Which does actually, there's a cultural thing there. You do actually see a lot more of that. I think it's wonderful, but where was the mom? Where was the dad? What was the story? What's the history there? And then, of course, medications. There's so much ridicule and criticism and stigma around medications. And, you know, was he on it? Well, okay, let's see. Was there serotonin blockers? Was there SSRIs? What was he on? Anything? I doubt he was, but he might have been. Might have been. Maybe he needed them. Maybe he needed them. Maybe he needed depression. That was one of the things. Maybe he had depression and he needed something to help with the depression, is what I meant. That was one of the things that the Governor Abbott said in the press release today. Is he mentioned, he goes, all the the beds for mental health, all of that into the building would have had to have probably been referred to San Antonio, a bigger city. So there's that element of it. I mean, where is the help? You can, you pick up a hotline. It's not actually going to save lives. I've done that. I've been that person where I pick up and I take those calls from people that are in duress, that are in a crisis, that are saying, I want to die, or I'm ready to kill myself, or even sometimes maybe it's a prank or a punking, but they're saying that they are killing themselves. You have to take it all serious. And I also did social services with at-risk youth. Well, that's an at-risk youth. Where's mom? Where's dad? Maybe low income, maybe not. I mean, we got to flesh it out. Was there medications? He picked up some guns and he was having issues at school. Was he bullied? It could be a classic bully scenario where he's going in, but why would you go and kill 8 and 9 and 10-year-olds? That level of psychotic, sociopathic, psychotic behavior it doesn't make sense. You can't wrap your mind around that. There has to be an intervention, or hopefully there's an intervention with people like that, and you have to consider medications. Sometimes there's alternative methods. Some people are talking about ketamine, talking about cubensis, talking about all kinds of different things, but where is that setting going to happen? Where is that setting? It's not going to happen overnight. So we have to keep a lookout on the future, because there's going to be more of these damaged teens that have been physically, psychologically, emotionally, spiritually damaged from the medical martial law, and that fear and anxiety programming. It's taken its toll, and we're seeing this now. That's my arguments, and there's plenty of evidence to back it up now, and there'll be more coming, unfortunately, to back it up in the future. You can't traumatize people, especially young, impressionable teens who are dealing with hormonal influxes and all kinds of different issues psychologically. You can't just yank them around and say they've got to go by themselves somewhere for the next year. Sorry about your luck. You can't do that without consequences. And we're seeing that through the drug overdoses, the highest teen suicide rates that we've ever seen. The drug overdoses, 200,000 last year, or 2020, and then last year they're saying over 100,000 drug overdoses. Many of those may have been unintentional. But people are like, oh, well, duh, people aren't trying to kill themselves. Well, sometimes they do, but what I mean is where they're taking, a drug's been laced with fentanyl. So even the powder of that fentanyl, the powder of it, mixed very, very lightly with something else, will kill people. And it's killed teens right in our community. My daughter's age. It's killed teens my daughter's age. And they thought they were taking a Vicodin. Like, Vicodin is dispensed in, well, it used to be like Tylenol. Yeah, it's a very common pain reliever. Well, on the black market, they're making their own tablets and pills, and so there is that element. But there's a lot of depression with those teens that are going to be thinking about ways to kill themselves through prescription pills. Very, very common, actually, and that's probably the number one thing that I saw back in the day when I was doing crisis counseling as a residential advocate. So there's going to be plenty more coming. So we have to address this. Not gun grabs, not gun control, not making political hay about it. That's not going to solve any of this. This really comes back to that root cause of mental health and healthcare, really, because the mental health funding is going to have to come out of something, and that's going to come out of a mental healthcare package. The mental health is under a healthcare package, is what I mean. So I think that's pretty obvious, and so that has to be addressed. And it's very unfortunate. It's triggered so many different memories of people that I've known in my life that have died, sometimes violently. I've been having thoughts the last couple of days about friends that have, one friend lost his wife on the train tracks. So they were drinking down right here in Portland on the train tracks, and his wife crashed out. Train came and ran over her. And so he called me and said, come over, and I came over and then told me that. Like I'm like the next person that comes into his house. It's like, Jesus, how do you counsel a friend like that? A brother? It's not like, I've known a couple different associates die from trains. And we've had a number of our public transportation train run over people recently. And over the years, there's been dozens of people that have actually died. You have to question, was that suicide by max? And I think it looks like it was suicide by max. Right now, 80% of the car crashes or people that die during a traffic accident, pedestrians that die during a traffic accident, were suicidal or houseless and or depressed and suicidal. So intentionally stepping out in front of that car on 82nd Avenue that's going just fast enough to actually kill you at 35 miles an hour, 40 miles an hour, or more. I mean, that's the thing. The cars go a lot faster on that at times. But I'm not a big advocate of clamping down on major thoroughways. But so anyway, I just kind of wanted to get that out. It's very therapeutic. I've had a lot of people die in my life, and as a lot of us have. Not all of us have survived somebody or knowing somebody that's been through a school shooting. But what is the story there? Would medications have helped? Was he on medications that fucked him up? What's that family trauma there? Could counseling have helped? I mean, what was the situation? Why cap abuela? Why grandma? It's like, she's taking care of you. I mean, did you take her black truck out? Why did he crash the truck? I mean, what was going on there? Was he high on something? Bath salts? Or, I mean, it's like you have to wonder what's the big picture there. One of the things that I noticed on my radar with the Buffalo shooting, the 18-year-old that was traumatized in his school medical martial law scenario, um, was that he identified with the Ukrainian Nazis. He identified, he had some of the symbolism of what looks like the sunflower. The sunflower's been a symbol, but they were calling it the black sun, which is kind of a well-known white supremacist type of a thing, this darker sun, black sun. I'd never heard that before. But the actual symbol comes from the Azov battalion of that dark black circle. Well, he has that in some of his pictures. He was identifying with who the Democrats are celebrating. Ukraine Nazis, who are in the Azov battalion, who are in the National Guard of Ukraine. That's who we're funding. That's who you're funding. He identified with that. So that programming, these young minds identifying with, well, that's the same white nationalists that were supporting there, fighting the Russians, the Ruskies, fighting Putin. Everyone's marching saying, yay, blue and yellow Nazi Ukrainian flags everywhere you go in this country. So that identification happened to that Buffalo grocery store shooter. He identified with who Biden called the hero, the Azov battalion. So, there's a whole lot there to unpack. I don't want to ramble on. I did want to mention we had that 100. I heard somewhere there was over 100 shootings on the lunar eclipse weekend. I mean, it wasn't just the eclipse. It was full moon in Scorpio with Mercury coming in direct. The heads. And now we have all of this weird clustering in Aries, the me first sign. The Ram, the Aries, Jupiter, and Venus, the goddess of love, that's where she's at. So your relationship now just went into me first. Don't argue about it. Either go do your own thing or address and cater to the queen or the king, because that's where heads are at right now. And Jupiter, literally the intellect. Jupiter is the intellect. That right there is in Aries. So it's a weird cluster of kind of narcissism. We're in this dangerous. I can't stand narcissism myself. I've had family. I've survived narcissism in the family. I'm traumatized from the narcissism. It ran like wildfire on the matriarch side. Multi-generation. And I recognize it. I'm allergic to it. And I immediately make adjustments and run. So maybe you should do the same thing. Don't mess around. If there's trouble or in the domestic situation, don't mess around. Get out. Get out. It's not a time to put up with it and try to make it work out. It's a time to say, hey, or just disappear. Ghosting. Sometimes you gotta ghost. I hate to admit it. I'm ghosting. Sometimes I feel like it's safer. I gotta ghost. Boosh. Speaking of that, peace out.